All right, welcome back. And as we've been doing all week, we're introducing you to some of the newer political parties who will be vying for the attention of the electorate as it gets closer to South Africa's 2024 general election on May the 29th. So today, we bring you yet another set of 3 new political parties registered on the IEC's national and provincial list as we continue to look at the role that smaller political parties will play in this year's election. So in studio with us this morning, we're joined by Dr. Jerome Swartz, who is President of Africa Restoration Party. Secretary General of the Action Alliance Development Party is Patrick Mabandla, and Rudolph van Heerden is the Free Democrats Party campaign manager. So as you can see, they're already on set, but let's quickly have a peek at what it is that these parties are promising the electorate. And we start with priorities for the Action Alliance Development Party. So this is what they are saying they will focus on: introduction of police, counsellors and nurses in schools, a total end to load shedding. They're also promising the reopening of all colleges of education in South Africa, 24/7 clinics and hospitals, and of course the strengthening of SOEs and the reopening of all airports. These are the promises and priorities for Action Alliance Development Party. Now, let's move on to priorities for Africa Restoration Alliance. And they want job security, putting South Africa first. Eskom prioritizing South Africa's energy needs. Also food security, securing South Africa's food supply. In terms of safety, they want protection for South Africa's citizens and the health system strengthening by putting South Africa's health first. And then the Free Democrats, let's see what they have in their manifesto. So the privatization of ports and rail, focus on job creation by turning South Africa into an attractive investment destination. Scrap BEE, which is simply corruption by another name, says the Free Democrats. They also want to encourage private education, augmented by online training, and hospitals should be operated and managed by private healthcare companies. So as you follow me across here, as I move behind Leanne, who's having her morning coffee, as always, just moving across here to where the gentlemen are joining me for this morning's discussion. Thank you so much for coming through. Welcome to Morning Live. But let's get straight into it, as 3 of the newer entrants. Dr. Swartz, if I can start with you, just talk to us about your party and what difference you think you can make to the South African political landscape.
Well, thank you. Also, morning to all the audience. And Restoration Alliance, the Africa Restoration Alliance, we really pride ourselves on restoring South Africa to where it ought to be, and also the future of Africa itself. So when we say restoration, we mean bringing back the dignity of South Africans. And so the party has grown tremendously. And we also say why we are different is because we have been doing this for some time. We've been doing this for more than 20 years. We've been feeding, we've been building homes, we've been fixing properties. This is just an opportunity to do it at the national scale. And so that's in a nutshell. And so then why are we also different? Because we are sitting with the old relics, the same old politicians. And if you want to see the same results, then vote for the same people. So we are also saying that, you deserve what you vote for. South Africa deserve what they have right now. South Africa deserve what they have right now. And we got to fight as South Africans for a new government, for a change in South Africa.
Well, interesting. Free Democrats. So, Rudolph van Heerden, tell us about the Free Democrats. Who are you and how are you hoping to make a change?
Thank you for having me, and good morning to everyone that's listening. So, the Free Democrats most importantly stand for free enterprise, because free enterprise is, we stand for free enterprise. And free enterprise, freedom of association, and then the privatization of ports and rail, as stated, and then as well as the privatization of the medical aid industry. It's complete privatization. And then within this privatization, we believe that the state should also be completely taken out of not completely taken out of the economy, but the state should be more or less removed from the economy, and most of the economy should be privatized. Because as you've seen with most of the things that the state has been involved in, if you look at examples throughout history, especially Germany, Russia, Venezuela, Argentina, even South Africa, anything that the state has intervened in significantly, it has stifled innovation, it has limited individual freedoms, and it has even, it's limited individual freedoms, and then it has also stifled innovation. And then within this as well, what you get is, you get stagnation essentially.
All right. And then Patrick Mabandla, tell us about your party and what it is that you hope to bring.
No, thanks Sakina, and we want to greet all South Africans. As you're saying, I'm Pat Mabandla, the Secretary General of the AADP, the party which was founded by Ben Maingani, the artist. I'm sorry about the voice. But what we are standing for as AADP is that we are in for the poor, the marginalized, the people who are staying in the villages, those who don't have roads, those who don't have water. Remember, the people of Limpopo are suffering just because of water. That's our focus. Sakina, we are coming to these elections with a number of things to change lives of our people. But first thing first, we want to bring God to school. You'll remember during our days, we used to have religious education where we're taught about everything in religion and respect and all that. But when you check today, there is nothing like that. The religious education is scrapped off. So we want to have the minister of religion in this country who's going to take care of everything like that.
That's very interesting. So maybe a good point at which to kick off,
Yes.
the discussion. A minister of religion is what the Action Alliance wants introduced. What are your thoughts, Dr. Swartz?
Yeah, a nation, if a nation doesn't have a religious core, you're going to go, it's going to be destroyed. You need to have a foundation. There need to be some traditions. And yes, I agree that we have to have a religious aspect. Although I'm a minister myself, you got to have, there must be a foundation. If there's no foundation, the family unit crumbles. We are seeing that in South Africa. We are moving away from the basics of family units. We're moving away from being patriotic in South Africa. We're moving away, we're becoming too liberal in South Africa. I believe also our constitution will say that has become too liberal. Our constitution was formed really by 300 students in Stellenbosch, at Stellenbosch on a farm. That's actually the truth, and it was catered for a few people. So, so in that sense, South Africa, if we talk about perspective, we have lost a lot of our core values in South Africa. We've lost the purpose of South Africa. We've lost putting SA first.
So, Free Democrats, Rudolph van Heerden, what do you think of that in terms of, having a minister, introducing a minister of religion for the country?
Well, the Free Democrats are about individualism. We don't do anything to do with collectivism. So, more or less, we have a more or less neutral stance. So, anyone, freedom of association and freedom of individual belief, that is that's our number one emphasis, other than the privatization of healthcare. So the individual has the right to choose what they believe in. Even though it is important to have traditions, the individual ultimately comes first within the Free Democrats.
So you don't believe that there's a need to introduce a minister of religion, because it should be up to the individuals, it should be up to the family unit perhaps to take care of those needs. Is that what you're saying?
Ultimately, yes.
Right. So your final response to that?
Yeah, it is very important for this country to have a minister of religion. Look at what is happening now. You go around the streets, you see girls standing anywhere else, and just because of the deterioration of the morals. We as South Africans, we lost ourselves, and we need God to be there with us. Look what is happening now at schools. You go to any school now, our kids are in danger because they can be stolen anytime, just because we lost ourselves as South Africans. So it's very important for all of us to have a minister of religion in this country.
But we are a secular state.
Yeah.
And you went back to when we were in school, and you're right, there was an actual period set aside where you would go for religious studies, so to speak. And yet, as a Muslim child, that didn't speak to me, because it was aimed at Christianity and Christian children. So it didn't speak to me as a Muslim child.
Okay. Sakina, when we talk of religion, we are inclusive. we don't select to say we're talking about Christianity or we are talking about Hindu and all that. Religion is a religion. Whatever you believe on, and then you pray, and then you believe that what you are doing is correct. That is religion. We are not saying let's go back and do Christianity or this type of religion. Here, we are also, as AADP, we are also including...
I was just pointing out to you,
yes.
you harped back to what happened when we were in school, and that was the reality
Yes.
back in the day when we were in school.
Okay.
There was no accommodation of any other religions. There wasn't. That was the reality. So you're saying it should be more inclusive,
Yeah.
and it's going to be interesting to see how
Yes.
that plays out.
Correct.
All right, privatization of ports and rail, very interesting. So talk to us about why you think that should happen as the Free Democrats.
So essentially, if you look at anything that has been state-run over the last, let's say since South Africa's founding, anything that has been more or less privatized has been able to function more efficiently. And when it's under privatization, you have much more heavily regulated. So there's less grounds for mass corruption and there's less grounds for mass looting to take place. And so within privatization, you get more efficient running of things as well. So what we do, our emphasis is more or less on the privatization of healthcare. Whilst port and rail is important, that's another stance that we have. Healthcare is where we actually are. So the privatization of healthcare is where that's where we take our strongest point. So where we want to establish a not a privately funded, but a tax-funded medical aid for every citizen of South Africa, funded from birth to death through VAT and sin taxes. And you obviously know what sin taxes is, which is taxes on tobacco, alcohol, sugar. So no new taxes are proposed with that regard. So it will also be privately administered by the heavily regulated private industries, as you well know. And then from there on, our stances are mostly privatization of just about more or less everything, yeah.
And I'll find out from the other two parties what their views are on privatization of most of our state-owned entities and also some of the services that these provide. So stay with us as we continue speaking to three new parties here this morning, looking at their campaigns for the 29 May elections, and of course giving you a sense of who they are and whether you would perhaps lend your vote to any of these three parties. But let's quickly take a break here on Morning Live. It's been such an interesting segment that we've been listening to the smaller parties, some of the new entrants coming into studio and telling us about their parties, their hopes and aspirations, and trying to woo you to lend your vote to them. And this morning we have in studio with us Dr. Jerome Swartz, President of ARA, and Patrick Mabandla as the Action Alliance Development Party Secretary General. Rudolph van Heerden is with the Free Democrats. Gentlemen, just before we go to the viewers' questions, because we've asked our viewers to send questions if they have any for you, and I believe we do. But we were talking privatizations, as Free Democrats have mentioned. They want to privatize, the rail, ports, those sort of things. Yeah. So let's hear your views on that.
Yeah, there's got to be a balance. We only say privatization because the government is not working. Now if you talk about privatization, you look at China that brought out, and we're not talking communism here, but China brought out 800 million people out of poverty, and they were not privatizing anything, but although they opened the markets. In 40 years, they lifted the poverty level of 800 million people in 40 years to something like about 98%. When you talk about, and if you look at the population of South Africa, we have about 64 million. Why is it not possible here? So government does has a role to play in dictating and also helping the markets, and also with a number of things. If you talk about privatization, you talk about our ports. Our ports in Durban belong now to the Philippines, and we're paying taxes to them. There's so much, when it comes to Eskom, yes, there should be a balance in privatization, but then also the cost of, what will be the cost of electricity? So there should be a balance in that. I also believe that state-owned enterprises, there are, well, most people probably don't know this, But if we look at state-owned enterprises in South Africa, we've got 700 state-owned enterprises, and in so much that if you can have a competence level in those companies, not cadre deployment, we could have had a better economy. Now, remember, we've inherited the state-owned enterprises from the previous government. And so the handing over was the problem. I believe the handing over and the training was the problem, and also the regulation was the problem. So privatization, not everything. I think this government has a big part to play. Otherwise, we should privatize government as well. We should privatize the army. We should privatize the police. We could, it just goes to, but what privatization are we talking about? So we believe in restoration again, putting SA first in that matter, but not in total privatization.
All right, so what do you believe should be privatized, if anything at all?
Well, Eskom should be privatized, but also there should be a control over some portions of the energy sector. Something should be privatized would be, well, if you talk about banking situation right now, we should invite more, open more the doors for more banks. And in this case, I would say again, you need a South African bank to look after South Africans. There's the balance again. But privatization is a very careful subject. If we talk about hospitals are privatized, in any case, we have a problem in privatization. The cost is quite high. And everybody's not having medical aid. Medical aid is privatized right now, and everybody cannot afford medical aid. We should put South Africans again first and say, how can we have every South African able to afford the medical aid or healthcare service in South Africa?
Okay, Pat Mabandla?
Sakina, you see, this issue of privatization is the one that is going to cost a lot of problems. Remember, we are living in a country where our people are grant dependent. If you privatize the entities, then you are causing a lot of trouble for our people. Our people cannot afford. He was indicating a very simple example, the private hospitals. Our people cannot afford to do that. So when we privatize the ports and all that, we're going to create a lot of problem, and the cost of living is going to be high. Look at what is happening now with food, just because of we can't afford to feed ourselves and our families. So when we keep on privatizing stuff, we are going to have a problem. I believe that South Africa must have a state bank which is going to look after the citizens, because that's where our people are going to have at least a better life. But when we privatize stuff, remember, we'll be privatizing the buses, we'll privatize the schools. Now our people at the ground level, where I'm coming from, that's the roads of Zingit, Nkomo, and that. They cannot afford to go to private school. They can only go to the public school because they're getting books, they're being fed, they're given transport by the state. That is much better. So when we privatize, we're causing a lot of trouble.
All right, I don't want to belabor it necessarily. Yeah. So let's take a look at some of the responses from our viewers, and they've sent in some questions for our panel here this morning. So this one first off from Nkosikona Matera, who says, my question goes to priorities for Action Alliance Development Party. So what will they do with illegal mining and illegal immigration and the issue of poor service delivery in rural areas of OR Tambo municipality?
Thank you so much. The AADP does not believe in illegal mining. That is first. We can't believe on that because that is totally wrong. And then we are saying in terms of illegal immigrants, we need to visit each other as Africans by using proper boards. We can't allow an influx of people coming under the fences, coming here without documents. That is not allowed. According to the AADP, we believe that we must visit each other as Africans, but at the same time, we must have proper documents. If I want to visit my people in Mozambique and all that, I must have proper documents. In terms of service delivery, Shakina must indicate that our president, Benny Mayengani, he started to give people water where he comes from. As AADP, as I'm speaking now, we are drilling boreholes for poor communities. We are also building houses for poor. We are building a house now, Akankomo 22B, for one lady who's staying with kids, too many kids in the house. She was staying in a shack. We are now, even now, I'm coming from that area. We're building it. So in terms of service delivery, we are a service delivery driven political party.
Okay, I get the service delivery. You say you're digging boreholes, you know, providing water to communities. But in terms of the other two aspects, the illegal mining and illegal immigration, what are your solutions there?
As I'm saying, we need to tighten the regulations in terms of how we manage our borders. When you look at what is happening now, things are very loose. People are just coming here. When you go to my village, where I'm coming from, every corner there's a spaza shop of these people who are coming from outside South Africa. They don't have papers. They're just operating there without papers. So,
but at that point, they are already in the community.
Yes.
How are you going to deal with that influx of people who come into the country illegally?
Okay. First thing, as AADP, when we take over government, what we are going to do with the influx of the people who are here, we'll be given, these people must be given a period to say, from here to there, you guys must be able to register yourselves so that you become a proper and legal people in this country. We are not going to allow a situation where people just stay and just come in like that.
Okay.
Yes.
Can
all right.
Maybe say something on the legal mining. You know, when you talk about illegal mining and so forth, you got to ask the question, why is it illegal in the first place, and then where do the immigrants come from? So your issue here is that your South African government, especially the mining department, have no control over the mines right now. We don't own the mines. We got Chinese, and we don't have something against the Chinese community, but you got Chinese standing in northwest, the trucks waiting to pick those people up and going to work. Our people are not working. So with your mining, you got to work the mining charter. You got to give back mines in Northern Cape to people. People of poverty. We got illegal, and people are doing this illegally because they need money. So if you talk about the Zamas or the illegal miners, you got to track them down hardly, quickly. You got a department. You have to put a special force together and deal with it. Clean up the mines quickly. Don't waste time sitting 4 months, 3 months down the line. We're still complaining about the issue. We got to do it quickly. Got to do it decisively. And other is we're talking about South Africa first again. We want to restore South Africa, and that's one of the plans for that.
Okay, let's move on to the next question now, and this one is for the Free Democrats from Rikesh. Rikesh asked, what will your party do regarding redress and creating an equitable society in post-apartheid South Africa, as this still is the most unequal society in the world?
That's an excellent question. So, first of all, the Free Democrats are about equality of opportunity, not necessarily equality of outcome, because equality of opportunity ensures the fairest way that you will have the chance based off of your skill level. And so, another way the Free Democrats is going to address some of the inequalities is we're not playing into identitarian politics. So that's one of the first major hurdles that you've got to get across is you don't play into identitarian politics, because so many parties nowadays play hopelessly too much into identitarian politics, and then they delve into tribalism. You fracture the country that way. You fracture your you fracture your voting base, and then through that you only get small parties that don't grow much, and you don't unite the country behind one banner, essentially. And so what we're going to do is by not playing into identitarian politics, we're going to give everyone an equal chance at a job. So we're going to remove restrictive labor laws. And so by removing restrictive labor laws, you essentially create a business-friendly environment, because it's not, how do I say this? It's not career politicians that create jobs. It's investment from business. It's investment from business that creates long-term sustainable jobs. So the state can create jobs in the short term, but the state isn't going to necessarily help the people keep those jobs in the long term, because the state can, say, build a new highway, and after the highway is completed, I mean, where are those people going to go?
So interesting, you talk about equal access to opportunity.
Yes.
So Rikesh's question also then talks about the unequal society that we live in, which means that our starting points are not equal. So is that something that bothers you as the Free Democrats, or do you just say, you know what, whatever has gone before, we are moving from here, from 2024 forward? How are you looking at this?
We're essentially looking at this from, there's nothing that we can do efficiently enough to get everyone at an equal playing field, but we can give everyone the equal opportunity, because when you start saying equity, when you start saying equality of outcome, you're getting dangerously, very dangerously close to communism there. And that's something that we definitely don't want.
Why don't we want it?
Because communism is essentially an ideology that has failed everywhere it was tried to be implemented. If you look at the Soviet Union, you look at North Korea, even though most people try and argue that it's not true communism, it's the result. You look at Cuba, you look at Russia nowadays.
China?
China's not necessarily communist. They're communist in rhetoric, but not necessarily in practice. But if you look at, there's been many states, Vietnam especially as well. Vietnam has a rather stagnant economy.
How has capitalism worked for the world?
Capitalism has worked for the world through, it provides people with an equal, how do I put this? The harder you work, the more you'd earn. And the state doesn't come and take everything from you just because, yeah, no, that's not a good way to phrase it. So there's less state control, although...
Okay. Rather, let's take a question. I believe there's a question for you, Dr. Swartz, so you can factor that in. So from Raskatoma, what impact will you have, or what will you do to improve citizens' well-being, more especially in the economical sense, and looking at the high rate of unemployment that the nation faces?
Okay, so the two questions basically is actually similar, because you've got to raise the living standard of a South African. So you look at the 7.5 million that's unemployed in South Africa, and you've got to ask yourself, how do we bring jobs into South Africa? You ask any political party, how do you bring jobs in? They cannot tell you. They say, well, we're going to do it somehow, investment, which is a lot of mojo jumbo, textbook rhetoric that somebody read. And, you know, they give us certain formulas. How do we sort out jobs? How do we have somebody... Because the equality line is actually a job line. I've been in 97% of all provinces in South Africa. And I can tell you that in Limpopo, Mpumalanga, Cape Town, Northwest, where people are sitting, they have got no opportunity, there's no job. That's your starting point. Your starting point is not an ideology, your starting point is a job. So how do you do it? First of all, we're launching this at our manifesto, but because we're national TV, on TV, just for you, I'll share this. You got to do jobs. You look at South Africa right now, and you look at how many businesses are for sale. This is how you start jobs in the next 6 months. There are probably something like about 1,500 businesses for sale. All right? And government, and this is where we say government has got to get involved. Government has to back up the loans to buy those businesses and employ those people. With those 1,500 businesses, you can actually employ something like 450,000 people within 6 months. We've got the resources. We've got the small finance enterprises. We've got the skill. We've got the competency. This is the way. This is a practical way to do it. And you're going to give somebody 490,000 people. You're going to give them a lift within 6 months. And you can box it in every province, because every province has businesses for sale. So it's one of the easiest ways to do it. That's one aspect. So I hope that answers that issue.
All right. And of course, we'll talk a little bit more after this break, and also start wrapping up the conversation with three of the new entrants to the general elections. And you can, of course, decide whether you will want to vote for them. You know, do you need more convincing? We're asking you that in our question of the day. But let's take a quick break. All right, welcome back. And of course, leading up to the elections, three more parties on the platform this morning. So we have Dr. Jerome Swartz, who's the president of the Africa Restoration Party. We also have with us Patrick Mabandla, who's Action Alliance Development Party Secretary General, and Rudolph van Heerden, a Free Democrats campaign manager. And by the way, he is the youngest person on the party list, will be eligible to go to be voted into the National Assembly at 19. All right, coalitions, you've got 1 minute. Who will you go into or not go into coalitions with, and why should people vote for you? You have a minute each.
At the moment, no coalitions with anybody, although at the moment what we have had 9 parties join us, by the way. People don't know that, but we had 9 parties join us, and the voting are in the national elections. And so we are looking after the elections, and we're also saying that for the benefit of South Africans, we work with people that are willing to put SA first.
Rudolph?
So with regards to coalition, we first have to get representation in Parliament for anything to get the works moving. So with regards to coalitions, we want more like-minded people, anyone that is rather sensible, so that automatically rules out many of the collectivist parties. And we also, the time will come when there's talks for coalitions, but at the moment we cherish our independence mostly.
And why should people vote for you?
So the reason why people should vote for us is because we want to establish a medical aid for every South African, a medical aid that is funded. It's essentially, it's free at point of delivery, because essentially nothing is free, because we're all going to pay for it eventually. But the way we pay for it is no new taxes are being implemented, and it's all funded from previously existing taxes such as VAT and sin taxes.
All right. Pat?
Yeah, Sakina, the AADP does not believe on coalitions. This is because we have got different mind. We are the only party which is ready to make sure that we revitalize the economy of this country and making sure that our education comes back to its origin. Remember, we used to have 50% as pass rate. Look at what is happening now. They even introduced the maths literacy, which they can't even define what is that. So as AADP, we are saying, our president, Benny Mayengan, who always said that want to lead this country alone and make sure that our people are serviced.
Gentlemen, thank you so much. And there you have it. This morning, 3 more parties that we've introduced you to campaigning for the 29 May 2024 general elections. Dr. Jerome Swartz is with the Africa Restoration Party, Patrick Mabandla, Action Alliance Development Party, and Rudolph van Heerden with the Free Democrats. And then our question of the day still stands. So you can tell us what you think of these 3 parties at Morning Live SABC.